Hi everyone, welcome to Sleep On It, the podcast for sleeping your way to better health. I'm Ying Ying.
And I'm Naina, and today we are going to talk about melatonin and all about melatonin. I know a lot of our viewers had a lot of questions about melatonin and wanted to know about what it is and how to take it. And so today we're going to cover all those great things. And why don't we get right into it?
Yeah, let's do it. So, what is melatonin, Naina?
So, melatonin is actually found in almost every living organism in the entire earth. So, it is quite prevalent out there, and it's a natural substance that our body produces.
Mhm.
Most of it is produced in a small part of our brain called the pineal gland.
The pineal gland. It sounds such a funny name for a
Right.
pea-sized organ in your brain. That's
So,
pretty cool that it's found in every living organism on Earth. So it kind of makes me feel like it's a very evolutionary process that created melatonin. There's a really fundamental reason why we have melatonin in our bodies.
yeah, and I think that it's so amazing because more and more research is coming out showing more therapeutic benefits of melatonin beyond just regulating our sleep and wake cycles. So we'll definitely talk about that. But I also was so fascinated by the fact that even though it's commonly thought to be produced by the brain, that new research is showing that our gut produces a lot of melatonin as well. And a lot of people are even talking about the gut being a mini brain in
Brain.
sorts because of that gut brain interaction and all those sort of chemicals that cross that boundaries and influencing each other. But
You think it's from the bacteria that's living in our gut that's making the melatonin, or is it not? Is it still our body's production of melatonin through the gut?
while it's a lot of what we eat that impacts our melatonin
That is true.
production, and actually there's research coming out showing that certain type of foods have can impact the amount of melatonin in our bodies, and for instance, certain fruits like cherries or strawberries or the skin of the grape have a lot of melatonin content in them, or by the time that you eat it will produce melatonin in your body rather. And also nuts, grains, cereal, mostly in plant products, but there are a couple of, if you in animal products, it's a little bit, melatonin production is a little bit less, but eggs and fish are a good source for melatonin as well. I think it just gives importance of the fact that, what we eat really does impact a lot of functions of our
Mhm.
body. And melatonin not only impacts our sleep and wake cycle and our circadian rhythm, but research is showing that it also impacts sort of our blood pressure, our endocrine system, and how we metabolize glucose too.
Is that because those are all related to the circadian rhythm? You were
Yeah,
mentioning before?
so in a way, yeah, definitely. So research is showing that all of these systems, the blood pressure, the cardiovascular system, rather, our endocrine, our digestive system, are all influenced by the circadian system. And the main sort of hormone regulator of the circadian system is melatonin. So research is showing that, the circadian system regulates not only our sleep and wake cycle, but other systems like the cardiovascular system, digestive, the endocrine system. So there are melatonin receptors all over your body. In your heart, in various aspects of your body. So research is still developing and trying to understand the exact mechanisms by which melatonin play a role in controlling these systems, but we know that it does have some role.
You said that one of the functions is to lower the brain temperature and boost feeling tired during periods of darkness. I mean, I just thought that was really cool because how does it know to do that? Like how did I guess it just because we were talked about previously how when we lower our brain temperature, that's when we feel sleepy, or body temperature, that's when we feel sleepy. Why is it so important that we feel that tiredness during those particular moments?
Yeah, so I think what it goes to show is that we need all different aspects of our body, including temperature, including exposure to lights, including what we eat, including our physical activity that impacts how we sleep and when we sleep. In fact, the drop in the body temperature that you're referring to is what is the signal that our body it's an important signal for our body to kind of realize that it's a time to go to sleep. And at the same token, when you the signal that occurs in the morning that allows us to wake up is the rise in body temperature. And so when we think about it in just really just rudimentary terms, I mean, that's very consistent with a drop in temperature of the night that normally occurs in most
Being
places. And
exposed to the elements, yeah.
exactly. And then the rise of the sun, which definitely increases the temperature and signals us to wake up. So we are sort of hardwired to really connect with our environment and in our bodies and understand what these cues mean.
It kind of reminds me of how there's that hormone to tell you when you're full, because otherwise you wouldn't know that you're full. It's like it sends a signal to your brain that you're full, but it's like obvious because you're eating so much. You can only take so much food, right, in your body. So it's like all these hormones, they have such quote unquote basic functions that we need, but without it, we're like completely, we then like kind of mess up our lives or get so
Yeah.
confused.
I feel like, we're naturally hardwired to be healthy. And
Mm-hmm.
it's in fact most of the time I'll say, and in fact, it's our behaviors in this modern world that really alter or change our natural system. And that's what causes the rise of these, diseases or insomnia or weight gain. It's because we're doing something else that's not consistent with our natural rhythms. I think one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about melatonin in this episode is because we see and hear about so many people taking melatonin, and it's literally just like almost a supplement that they are taking on a daily basis. And I'm not sure that every people really know what the implications of that is. And so that's some of the we're hoping to dispel some myths and kind of enlighten ourselves about what melatonin means.
Yeah,
Um,
which tends to happen with anything that becomes mainstream, right? And it becomes kind of word of mouth. Your friend or your parents' friend would tell their friend, "Oh, I've been using melatonin and it's been great. You should try it." It almost becomes like this prolific, right, suggestion, but it's hard for people to really understand the nits and details about it.
and it's advertised a lot too. And melatonin in itself is, the research is generally pretty positive about it. The research has shown that melatonin may be helpful in, has a lot of antioxidant properties, may be anti-cancerous. It may delay aging and delay sort of the onset of cognitive deficits and even Alzheimer's in some research has shown.
And you said
Um,
GERD and heartburn as well, which I didn't know about, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and things you wouldn't even make a connection to with melatonin, right? Normally we all associate
Yeah.
melatonin with just
Just a
sleeping.
sleep thing, yeah.
Yeah. The problem though is that because of these therapeutic effects, which are starting to become shown through the literature, that now there are a lot of sort of companies just producing,
You
mass
want to
amounts
jump
of.
on that train right now, I guess.
Yeah, it's like a bandwagon, and people want to jump on the bandwagon, and it's in a lot of things. It's not just, in sleep aids. It could just be in a multivitamin or sugar gummy bear that you've heard about that people have advertised.
We've dragged that company so much, but I think it's because of how they've marketed that we have an issue with that they tend to target people that may not necessarily need the melatonin, or it's seen as something such a simple solution, but there's so much more depth to it.
The other problem potentially with, just taking a source of melatonin you find over the counter is that melatonin products are generally not regulated by the FDA because it's considered sort of a dietary supplement. In fact, 71% of melatonin supplements on the market, the melatonin content doesn't even come to 10% of its labeled claim.
That you think you're buying a product because it has that key ingredient. You're like, oh, I'm buying this because it has melatonin. And then you look at the back and it's like, oh, it has all these other things and just a tiny little bit of the melatonin that you actually really wanted to get. It almost makes me feel like I'd rather just save my money and just get the exact source itself from, either like a more, like you said, more reliable source or from natural products.
Yeah, and there are, and because certain foods are known to increase your own melatonin production, that might be, and research has shown that eating those foods actually correspond to an increase in serum levels or body serum levels of melatonin. Eating those healthy foods, and generally, it is sort of the natural sort of seeds and grains and lentils and cherries and strawberries. And there's quite a sort of list that maybe we can provide a reference if people are interested in. But doing it in a natural way, you might just be better off because you don't know what other, as you mentioned, other additives or type of melatonin compounds are in these over-the-counter products. There was a review of over 50 articles that tried to look at the adverse or negative effects of taking oral melatonin in among the natural population, and 26 found no statistically adverse events.
It's good.
But 24 articles found at least one minor adverse event, and they weren't terribly bad. They were affecting fatigue or mood and sort of just your alertness. And although sort of benign side effects, I mean, they can have an impact on how you function throughout the day, right? If you're feeling really tired in the morning, or you're feeling loopy, or
Absolutely. Because it
yeah.
could also, like you said, influence people's behavior. So it's not just the fact that it causes a physiological change in your body, because people make decisions and actions based on how they're feeling. And so let's say they take this melatonin or supplement and they think that it's going to help them, but it just ends up making them feel more tired. They might think that it's something else. They'll blame themselves, or they'll just get frustrated, or they'll think that it's because of something they're doing, and I'm just thinking that it's just going to throw people off and
Right,
make them more
especially when
confused. Mm-hmm.
right, if especially if there's the notion that melatonin is the cure-all or the miracle
Right.
drug, I mean, then people will have a hard time believing that that may be the cause of them feeling not so good in the morning. It must be something else because melatonin is just so good. Different quantities of melatonin can certainly impact how people experience the effects of melatonin. And, before we get into sort of the timing of taking melatonin or how much to take, I think one important thing to know is that people who have long-term sleep problems, where they either feel not refreshed by their sleep or they have a hard time falling asleep, may look to melatonin as a solution for that problem. But I really caution against it, because in those situations where it's been a really long time where you've had that problem, melatonin is likely not going to help. And in those cases where it's been a chronic issue, it's probably very worth it to get evaluated for a sleep disorder that may be affecting the quality of sleep, because melatonin won't fix that. So melatonin is really helpful in signaling to the brain that it's nighttime, and it does promote sleep and may have some sedating effects on a small population of people. That has been shown in research and even anecdotally talking to my patients. But it's not a cure-all for other sleep problems that are more prevalent, like obstructive sleep apnea or periodic limb movements, or another type of disorder, or even insomnia.
Yeah, I really love that you touched on this, because that's what I've absorbed from my experience, is that sleep is something that people feel very kind of iffy about. Like if you have back pain, like in our previous episode, we talked about people will want to address it, and then if it doesn't improve over a certain amount of time, they'll probably go see a PMR doctor. But with sleep, so many people I know, they just kind of assume that their issue with sleep is their own fault. That, it's something that they need to fix themselves most of the time. And I don't know if this is a cultural thing as well. It almost reminds me of how people also approach mental anxiety and depression. They just kind of want to find other sort of coping mechanisms to solve it before going to an expert, if they do. And so I really like that you pointed that out, because if you're having poor sleep or having trouble sleeping and this has become a chronic issue, we talked about how that can very severely impact your health in the long term, and also your mental well-being, right? And your ability to focus, or you maybe feel a balance of emotions and thoughts. And so it's not something that people should just quietly, suffer on their own and be like, yeah, I hardly get a good enough sleep, but I need to keep trucking. I just need to keep moving, and I'll just take these, supplements or melatonin, or drink wine, or like try to force myself to fall asleep and just lay there. And so I appreciate what you're doing, Nina, trying to provide some of these like really helpful solutions to help people on a problem I think is very underrated.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Sleep has so many downstream effects, and melatonin, it can often just be a pathway to, or thought of as like a quick fix or a quick solution, which it may be beneficial to some people, but I definitely think it's not a substitute to getting really evaluated and really seeking care, and not putting all that pressure on yourself. So I agree 100%, Yinging. And I also want to say that if you have a sleep disorder and you take melatonin, it's gonna probably make you feel more tired in the morning and have the opposite effect. So if it's a long-term thing, then definitely get evaluated. There has been so very few, if not any, really long-term studies looking at the long-term effects or impacts of melatonin, and also the impact of melatonin in what we call more vulnerable populations like pregnant women or
Mm.
children. And if you don't fall in that category and you're interested in taking melatonin, I would say one of the most common questions I get is how much do I take or what's the right amount? And research has shown that the smaller amounts of melatonin can be very effective. However, they were pharmaceutical grade melatonin that were seen in most of these studies. So the amount is precisely calculated. And we don't know what the amount of actual melatonin really is in these non-regulated supplements out there. So it's really hard to tell what dose to take when looking at those over-the-counter sources. But generally, as a rule of thumb, I would say start at the smallest, so maybe 0.5 milligrams or 1 milligram. See how, take it and see how it does for you, and you can slowly increase it up. I wouldn't exceed anything above 9 milligrams. I don't think there's really any therapeutic benefit, but again, it's hard to know what else is in these over-the-counter supplements. So melatonin, like we talked about, regulates your sleep and wake pattern and also has impacts on other systems of your body. So the timing is really important of when you take melatonin. If you do not take it at the same time every evening or every night before bed, it can cause further circadian misalignment, potentially impact other physiological aspects of your body, and on top of that, just impact how you feel the next day. You may feel more tired. And so I generally say for most people, if you don't have a circadian issue or disorder that you've been diagnosed by a sleep doctor, for most people, maybe taking about up to 45 minutes or an hour before bedtime might be helpful.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of birth control, where the doctor tells you have to take it at the same time every day, or else you're gonna mess up your current cycle, your natural cycle. So that's, I don't know if people really understand or know that that's the same thing with melatonin, that you should take it around the same time every day.
And one thing I was really fascinated about in learning about circadian systems and the melatonin is that the research is showing that maybe the future will be timed medication. So all the medications people will take might be timed to align with the circadian system and the optimal timing.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so
Super
that's
smart.
exciting, and it could be the future of medicine as well.
I do appreciate that it makes it aligned with your body. Like, I think that's the thing that is missing, you know? It's like having this very strategic understanding of how your body works and how to work with your body. Like, kind of, you have to work together and be compatible together, and then have a treatment plan that works with that.
I think more people are drawn to melatonin right now, or maybe because there's a lot of factors in our environment that are likely disrupting the amount of melatonin that our bodies normally produce. For instance, we know, with the advent of technology and a lot of screen time, especially in this remote work from home environment, I would say that most people, I'm guessing that melatonin production has likely gone down in the evening time for people if you're exposing yourself to
Mm-hmm.
bright lights, because light is certainly a strong factor in how much melatonin we produce. It could be helpful to people who can't, for whatever reason, if their job do have to be glued to the screen, melatonin might be helpful to supplement that in their bodies. Yeah, and another myth that, or question that I often get from patients, and I think that is a common myth out there, is, if I take melatonin, then I'm going to be addicted to it because it is considered a sleep aid. The answer to that is, well, it shouldn't be. Melatonin, lasts for a few hours in your body, and then it levels off, or it decreases rather. And so taking melatonin, research has shown that there's really no addictive potential to it, and there's also very little withdrawal effects from it as well. So it should be able to, in most situations, come off of it if you wanted to pretty easily without feeling the addictive or withdrawal.
Repercussions of going off of it.
Exactly.
When you were telling me about melatonin, it reminded me of this like really cool story I heard. about this poker player who made a bet with another poker player. I believe the poker player's name is Rich Alati. And he made a bet with this other famous poker player, Rory Young, I believe. And you know, poker players, they like to play mind games all the time. They're all about their mind and strengthening their mind. And the bet was how long could someone stay in a pitch dark room with no social interaction? How long would they last? The guy said, I think I can last for a month. And so they made this bet of $100,000 for Rich Alati to be in a bathroom with just a bed, and they'll have food delivered to him like 3 to 6 days at a time, but they wouldn't tell him like how long time has passed, so he have no concept of time. And they would like board up all the windows so he was in complete pitch darkness. And the door is unlocked, so he could technically walk out anytime. But they had to be evaluated by psychologists and like have lawyers involved, because the idea that your brain and your body is completely devoid of light, they said that it's very likely for you to start hallucinating and also feeling signs of depression. And he said that what happened was he went in and he tried to maintain a routine. So he would get up every morning, you know, brush his teeth, and even do his hair, even though no one was going to see his hair in the mirror. And he would like take a bath and do yoga and exercise. And after about a week, he said that he started hallucinating. He started seeing like stars, and he tried to keep calm because he knew his brain was going to trick him if he didn't. And then he also said that he started having really dark thoughts. And like those dark thoughts started creeping in, and then whenever that would happen, he would immediately start exercising. And so, long story short, they did end up compromising on a like a lower bet, so he was able to get out after I think 20 something days instead of a month, and he got $63,000 instead of 100,000. But after hearing that, he said that he had to come out of the room, he had to wear glasses, but the moment he saw all his friends and family, he immediately felt this wave of emotion come out. And I'm sharing this story because it made me wonder, like, is melatonin or maybe other hormones that promote melatonin or related to melatonin, they all kind of play together in that scenario. Like, what happens if someone's in a pitch dark room, they don't have light, and then are they able to sleep? Although Rich said that he was able to sleep sort of okay. So, like, as
That
a
is,
sleep doctor, what do you think about that real story? Like, what kind of resolve, what kind of, like, this person, I have to give it to him. Rich has a lot of brain
yeah,
power.
yeah, that is quite tough. I mean, especially in modern day, I mean, that like hats off. Not that I would venture into doing that ever, maybe for the
Probably
advent of
no normal person would do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to be frankly honest with you, that is such a great story because it reminds me of how we discovered the circadian system in the first place when
Mm-hmm.
two researchers actually spent, I think it was, you know, it was like a month or maybe even long. It was maybe even longer. I don't remember the exact time, but they spent a long time in caves without access to light. And so they measured and monitored their own sort of vital signs, and they wanted to see whether without the environmental cues, whether their body would still fall into a rhythm and measure how long the circadian timing or system was every single day, and whether our body was functioning on a 24-hour clock. And they found that without even external clues of light or any other stimulus, that our bodies are will still maintain their natural sleep in wake cycle. And it's because it's primarily driven by the chemicals or hormones of your brain and your gut. So people will still, you know, sleep most of the time in the same period. Even if they in fact themselves lose the track of time, their body doesn't. I'm not surprised that he was still able to have somewhat of a routine because our bodies are hardwired to do so. But you do bring out a very interesting question of it, which is, how does it impact mood? Clearly, he definitely had a negative effect, right? He started either hallucinating. That may have been a response to a negative emotion that he had or was feeling at that time. And so I'm interested to know that as well. I don't know that there's a lot of research looking at, but I think they're starting to do it, looking at the effects of melatonin on mood, especially, for instance, in the elderly. The research has shown that, you know, melatonin may be particularly helpful for the elderly population because as your brain changes as we age and that pineal gland becomes calcified or what have you, then they do produce less melatonin. So in those situations, research has shown it can help fight off Alzheimer's, you know, but we also know that cognition is closely related to mood and happiness. So I'm curious exactly what the relationship with that is. In addition, I think there are a lot of medications which have been shown to interact with melatonin in a way that maybe melatonin decreases the medication. Some common antidepressants are impacted by melatonin. So I'm curious, what then that makes me more curious about what the relationship of melatonin with mood is. That class of medications has been shown to be impacted by melatonin, as well as blood pressure medications. This is an interesting thing to think about because there's a lot that we don't know,
A lot of
that could
promising potential
and
out there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like, are there, do people who have poor gut health, for instance, if they suffer from
Leaky gut,
um,
maybe.
leaky gut, like how is their melatonin production? And now we know that the gut is really responsible for a lot of our melatonin content. So I think those are definitely things to think about and future directions for research too.
Yeah, guys. Get on it. Credit us. No, I'm just kidding.
I will say that, when used properly with the right timing and maybe even advised from a healthcare professional, melatonin may be really helpful for a lot of people. But I do think it's not a band-aid to an underlying problem. And the best way to potentially increase your own melatonin is not just by regulating your sleep and wake cycle, which of course is an important way. And also just how we eat, how we interact with our environment, getting enough light throughout the day, getting enough exercise, eating timely meals, not binging on foods, which, we all do at some point. But, all these things impact our circadian rhythm and our circadian system, which can impact healthy weight, as well as blood pressure, as well as reproductive health. There has been some question about, because melatonin has been implicated in fertility and affecting the reproductive system. So there has been some caution in using it long-term in children that could impact sort of the onset of puberty or fertility. I think our takeaway message and the message that we want to send to our audience about melatonin is, be mindful of melatonin and what it is. Although it's advertised greatly right now, and especially by sort of influencers out there in the media, that it's the cure-all, I would advise some caution in taking it, especially if in a vulnerable population like young children without being evaluated by a physician, or pregnant women. Definitely melatonin, if used in the right manner and used from the right source. I generally recommend trying to get the purest and most organic form of melatonin out there, and that may be pharmaceutical grade if you are going to use it, but definitely take it at the same time every day, because timing is so important and matters in how melatonin affects your body. And potentially stay away from all day aerosolized products that have melatonin in them. Like,
Don't be drawn by the TikTok videos
definitely.
promoting it. I mean, at least take the time to learn more about it and see what the potential side effects might be or the future long-term effects.
Yeah, and if you have a long-term sleep problem like insomnia or not getting good quality of sleep, there may be something else going on that is worth getting evaluated by your sleep doctor. So it's definitely not a band-aid for those things, and may potentially make you feel worse. But the bright side of all this, though, is that research is showing that melatonin may have a lot more benefits other than sleep. And so I'm definitely very excited to, stay tuned into knowing more about the results of those research studies, looking into gut health, looking into antioxidant, anti-cancerous properties, as well as delaying aging, and what the story you mentioning potentially effects on mood, which we can all use a boost, especially in times like now.
Thank you so much, Nina. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe if you haven't already, or send us a review or comment about what you think and what you would like to hear about in future episodes. We greatly appreciate it. Please give us a like if you're watching us on YouTube, and hit the bell icon for more notifications. So until next time, we hope you sleep on it.
Sleep on it, guys. Take care.